Tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Welcome to the third of the Sunday afternoon talks, and the theme for today is spiritual birth control, which I thought was an interesting title. I didn't come up with the title myself, but I thought it was an interesting title, and it reminded me of an occasion when I was at a conference of Western Buddhist teachers with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Dharamsala many years ago, back in the early 90s, I think. And the subject of birth control was being discussed amongst His Holiness and the group of Western teachers. And he turned to me at a certain point and said, Bhikkhu, what do you think about birth control? And I said, well, I'm doing my bit. Yeah. As a Buddhist monk. And then it occurred to me, I said, well, actually, I think in Buddhist practice, what we are focusing on is rebirth control. So that sort of sprang to my mind, that particular encounter, sweet exchange between myself and His Holiness many, many years ago. So with respect to this theme, the subject that I'll explore is around the teachings of dependent origination, rather than sort of spiritual ways that you might prevent yourself from having babies. Apart from that as being an obvious meaning of the word birth control, the theme for today will be about spiritual birth or rebirth, or psychological birth and rebirth, and that rather than biological. So that's the intention for today. I'll focus on that particular area of things. And I'm also going to presume that most people who are gathered here and watching and listening in from afar will have some degree of familiarity with those teachings of the Buddha on dependent origination. And this is where he mapped out the relationship between ignorance and then the field of sense experience, then the connection of perception and feeling and craving, and then to birth. In this particular instance, in this approach, we're talking about psychological birth, and then that leading on to suffering, difficulty, discontent, dis-ease, and then to further birth and the continuing of that cycle. So if anyone is unfamiliar with the teachings on dependent origination, then I recently published this particular little book called Catastrophe Apostrophe, the Buddha's teaching on dependent origination cessation. So not that this is a shameless act of self-promotion, but I thought, well, since I'd put a bit of work and thought into gathering these teachings and ideas together in this book, and I saw the theme being suggested, I thought I'd put them together and explore some of the themes here in this Sunday afternoon talk that I also explore in this little book. And so it's I'm not pretending that what we'll offer today is sort of exhaustive or the only way of looking at the teachings on dependent origination, but it's one angle of approach and one way of thinking about things or exploring those particular teachings, because the Buddha really emphasized the importance of this particular set of teachings. It's described how after his enlightenment, reflecting on the nature of his liberation in Bodh Gaya after his full enlightenment, that these themes of dependent origination in the arising mode, the cessation mode, and arising and ceasing together, that was a lot of what he was contemplating for long periods of time, and many hours, days following the enlightenment. And there's also a place in the teachings where he makes the comment, one who understands dependent origination, one who sees dependent origination sees the Dhamma, one who sees the Dhamma sees dependent origination. So it's a really crucial, essential teaching in this respect. There are different ways of looking at the teachings on dependent origination, and in some ways it's talked about in the suttas and in the commentaries. Then it covers a span of several lifetimes. It's talking about the birth, physical birth of an individual being, and then the process of experience and the qualities of suffering that arise from that, and so on and so forth. And this is known as the three lives interpretation: past life, present life, and future life. And so that, say, the form that's presented in the Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, focuses mostly on that sort of three lifetime interpretation of this say set of qualities, this one what we call dependent origination, dependent cessation. And then another angle of approach is what's known as the momentary, the momentary interpretation, or looking upon dependent origination as a momentary experience, as it's describing not the physical birth, but the mind being caught into a particular experience and being born into that sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, that emotion, that thought, that feeling, that memory, that idea. And so a psychological birth. And within the forest tradition, teachers like Venerable Ajahn Chah, Venerable Ajahn Buddhadasa, focus mostly upon that, what we call the momentary approach. And debates have gone on for years and years about which is the right understanding. Is it three lifetimes? Is it the momentary approach? What's the true story here? And Venerable Somdet Payutto is one of the most eminent scholars and practitioners of Buddhism in Thailand. He did an analysis of the whole Pali Canon and the commentaries in an extremely thorough way, and he found that in the commentaries, about 2/3 of the teachings refer to the three lifetimes model, and about 1/3 refer to the momentary model. And in the suttas, it's the other way around. So you have about 2/3 of the references to dependent origination in the suttas are around the momentary interpretation, and about 1/3 are referring to several lifetimes, over the three lifetimes. So I won't get into that debate here, but for today, I'll just be looking at the momentary interpretation. And when we talk about birth control, and spiritual birth control, it's that quality of working with the mind and seeing how those mental births, psychological births, take place, how the mind gets born into like and dislike, comfort and discomfort, approving, disapproving, happiness and unhappiness on a momentary basis. The pattern of dependent origination is described in various different ways in the suttas. I think about 8 or 9 different formats you can find of different kinds, but it's generally summarized as having 12 individual links. And particularly in relationship to this psychological birth, it's a process that happens very, very quickly, from the beginning of the cycle at avijja, ignorance, not seeing things clearly, to the feeling of dukkha, or what in Pali is described as sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, sokha parideva dukkha domanassa upayasa. That happens very, very quickly. Luang Por Chah described it as like falling out of a tree and trying to count the branches of the tree on the way down, like trying to keep track of all the different aspects of dependent origination. It happens so fast you can't count all the branches, but thud, ow, you know when you hit the ground that it hurts. So that's a good way of appreciating the kind of rapidity and the the speed with which this process takes place. So in looking at this, and particularly in terms of this sort of psychological birth, then there's a certain teaching that I find quite beautiful, very helpful, where the Buddha talks about the nature, how this psychological birth occurs, and it's in the Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta, the exposition of the elements, Sutta number 140 in the Middle Length Discourses. And he points, in that instance, rather than going into dependent origination in detail, he points to it as, say, the result of the mind conceiving. Manyati is the Pali word for conceiving, so that this is how the mind creates the I am, the I, me, mine feeling. So he says in that particular teaching, he says, I am is a conceiving, I will be is a conceiving, I will not be is a conceiving, I am this is a conceiving. Conceiving is a disease, it's a tumor, it's like a poisoned arrow, like it's burdensome, it's stressful. And to free the heart from all conceivings, if the heart is freed from that manyati, that conceiving, that I-making and mind-making, then one is called a sage at peace. And a sage, like a wise being, one who is a being that is fully at peace, one who is free, who is unburdened. A sage at peace is not born. A sage at peace does not age. They do not die, because there's nothing in them whereby they could be born. So that's what one particular place I feel in the Pali Canon, where it's very, very clear that the Buddha is speaking about not being born into like and dislike, comfort, discomfort, gain and loss, and so forth. That a sage at peace is not born, so that being is alive. They're present. There's this say the existence or the manifestation of a living being, but they are not born. They're not buying into things. They're not taking hold and identifying with the field of experience. And as he says in that particular teaching, a sage at peace is not born. They do not age, they do not die. Doesn't mean that the body won't die, but it means that the heart not being born into things, not taking hold and identifying with the field of sensory experience, mental experience, then that being born, aging and dying, the heart is not tied to that. It does not get involved in that. It is liberated from those boundaries, those limits. So, in reflecting on this area and the control aspect of birth, spiritual birth control, how we can work with this mind, this life of ours, in order to counteract the habits of getting born into the things that the mind chases after, or opinionates about, or is worried about, or is annoyed by, or wants to possess, and those pools of desire and fear and aversion and opinion and so forth. And then we can see that there's different ways, different stages of that process where the mind can be liberated. And so, reflecting on this over the years, I've come up with, say, 4 distinct exit points from the cycles of dependent origination. Again, I'm assuming that most people are somewhat familiar with the 12 links of dependent origination. Again, it's all here in this little book. If you available on the shelves here at Amaravati, also on the website. Yeah. There are many other books on dependent origination, particularly the one by Venerable Payutto is particularly good, published by Buddha Dhamma Foundation, just called Dependent Origination. It's an extremely helpful handbook. But so the 4 exit points that seem to be clearly marked or stand out clearly in my mind are somewhat related to the 4 noble truths. And the first one, the first noble truth is the truth of dukkha, of suffering, of dissatisfaction, and that in the cycle of 12 links, then dukkha is the last one. It's so link number 12. That's where when the mind has been, say, affected by ignorance, has been caught up in sense perception and has followed a particular pattern of craving and has been born into a like or a dislike, a hope or a fear, comfort and discomfort. And the result of that attachment, that birth, is sukha parideva dukkha domanassa upayasa, that quality of dukkha, dissatisfaction. So the first exit point is related to the first noble truth. There is dukkha. This is what the Buddha pointed out as the first noble truth. We are not totally happy all of the time. We experience dissatisfaction. And related to that, there's a particular, and how the Buddha then says we should work, or it's most helpful to work with that experience of dukkha. It's the first noble truth because it needs to be acknowledged, it needs to be recognized, parinyayanti, it needs to be appreciated, to be known. And that quality of turning towards dukkha and recognizing, this is the feeling of dissatisfaction. Then in a separate teaching, he points out that experience of dukkha, it can ripen in two ways. It can ripen in more dukkha, so when you're feeling suffering and incomplete and lonely and insecure, frazzled or irritated and angry with something or wanting something that you haven't got, and the mind is locked into that if there is that real appreciation, if there is that parinya, that recognition, this is dukkha, then that will lead on a pathway towards liberation. If there isn't that, if it's just, I haven't got what I wanted and that's bad, or that person's really awful, they're annoying me, or if only I wasn't here, if only I was over there, then life would be great. Then the attachment to an identification with dukkha then leads just to more dukkha. That creates more ignorance, more of a tendency to see things unclearly, and then the whole cycle of dependent origination begins again. It leads to more avijja, more ignorance, which leads on to, say, more tendency to identify and attach to our desires and fears and aversions and so forth. But if that dukkha is recognized, if there is that sense of apprehending dukkha, understanding it, receiving it, then it ripens in another way. And the Buddha, in the Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses in the Book of the Sixes, Sutta number 63, he says dukkha can ripen in two ways, either in more dukkha or it can ripen in search. Which means to say, there must be a way out of this. There must be an alternative. This can't be the whole story. Yes, I'm prone towards complaining or worrying or desiring. I'm addicted to this particular habit, but I know in my heart, I intuit that doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be that way. There has to be an alternative. And then in a teaching called what's known as Transcendent dependent origination, then that he points out how that dukkha then, following that second track of search, it leads towards faith, that sense of, yes, there must be a way, that's right. And the heart intuits that, and that faith, that saddha, that leads to delight, pamojja. And that delight leads to joy, piti, rapture, and that rapture leads to calmness, passaddhi. That passaddhi ripens into sukha, or a profound contentment. And when the heart is content, then it's easy for it to be concentrated. When the mind is concentrated and focused on the present, then it gives rise easily and naturally to insight, to the knowledge and vision of the way things are, and that in turn leads to dispassion, to disenchantment, to viraga and nibbida, which then leads to liberation, to vimutti, and true knowledge and liberation, true knowledge and that freedom of the heart. So that that is say the first exit point from the cycle is is that feeling of dukkha itself. So when we've really messed up, we've followed some impulse, we've got angry and blown up at somebody, or we've overindulged at the mealtime, or we've been telling the story, we've bent the truth for the sake of spinning a good yarn, telling a good story, and even though we recognize, well, it didn't quite happen that way, but you've drifted into bending, distorting the truth just for the sake of keeping the people that you're talking to amused or interested or impressed. That when that experience of dukkha is felt, when we recognize that, then we can take that feeling of dukkha, and then that right there can be a cause for liberation. So that's the first way of controlling those habits of psychological birth, or the mind getting born into things. Appreciating the painful results of having been born into that like or dislike, that feeling, that attachment to that opinion, that point of view, or that memory, or that opinion, whatever it might be. And then the second exit point is related to the second noble truth, and the second noble truth is the Buddha spells out as the cause of dukkha, as self-centered craving, tanha, and that and this is highlighted by the Buddha in the teaching on the Four Noble Truths, because this is in a way the most accessible. It's the biggest fire exit. Like sitting here in the temple at Amaravati, I've got a double door in front of me with an escape sign with a running figure and an arrow. And this is the escape. This is the main way out. If the building catches fire, that's the fire escape. So this the second of the exit routes, the sort of fire exits, if you like, from the cycle of dependent origination. That's the biggest one, the most obvious one. That's the kind of double door treatment. And so the Buddha highlights this in the teaching on the Four Noble Truths, that craving, conditioned by feeling, that the quality of craving, if that's recognized and if that's known, that this is tanha, the different, whether it's subtle kinds of craving in terms of craving to be, craving to become something, bhavatanha, or the craving to not be, to not feel, to not experience, vibhavatanha, to annihilate, or to go numb, to switch off, push away, or the more obvious kinds of craving for pleasant sense objects. That if that craving is recognized, if it's let go of, then that is the best way, the most helpful and effective way of working with that experience, and that is leads very directly to that the ending of suffering, the way out of suffering. So in the cycle of the 12 links of dependent origination, just to spell those out briefly, number one is ignorance, avijja, not seeing things clearly. Avijja pachaya sankhara. Sankhara, ignorance conditions formations, or that sankhara is that compounding quality of the mind. It's that which creates the sense of self and other, here and there, this and that. So that with ignorance there is the beginning of that subject-object division. Sankhara conditions consciousness, vijnana, sensory consciousness, and then consciousness conditions mind and body, nama and rupa. So again, there's many ways you can regard this, interpret this, and people have written many books and doctorates about different ways of understanding these. But this is essentially, in working with this over many years, one can see this all as the forming and the strengthening of the mind, that knows the world and the objects of the world, so that the strengthening and a solidifying of the subject-object division. There's me here, there's the world out there. I'm sitting here, there's a microphone in front of me, there's a little camera with a red light on it. I'm sitting here in the temple. There's I am speaking, I am hearing the sound of my voice, I am seeing you, I'm seeing the world is out there, it's the building, the people, the camera, the microphone, the sound of this voice. That's the object, and here is the subject. So that in that first part of the dependent origination process, and with nama and rupa, mind and body, then conditioning the six senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and then the six senses then conditioning the realm of feeling of liking, disliking, and neutral feeling, painful feeling, pleasant feeling, neutral feeling. So that's the setup, if you like, of the subject-object division, and then the formation of the sensory world as an experiencer here, and then there is the pattern of the sensory world. And then when the attention engages with the particular object, then it produces pleasant feeling, painful feeling, or neutral feeling. So then that feeling, Vedana, then conditions craving, tanha. So if there's considerable ignorance, if the mind it started off from not seeing clearly, then even that process of say, going from ignorance to sense contact, that's very, very quick. Like Ajahn Chah put it, like falling out of a tree and trying to count the branches on the way down. It happens too fast for ordinary sense perception, ordinary experiential process to keep track of it. But that's how it works. The Buddha mapped it out in a very, very similar way to sort of neuroscientists of today as well. So then this key link, the bridge between feeling and craving, that's the important part. Because if there's a lot of ignorance in the mix, then if there's something pleasant that's experienced, then that liking goes to I want. If it's something that's painful, it's I dislike, from disliking to I've got to get away from, I can't stand, I hate. So that is a bridge that is being crossed. There's a choice that's being made, so that the mind is going from just knowing pleasant feeling to I want, I've got to have, or knowing painful feeling to I can't stand, I've got to get rid of. So normally things work so fast, and if the mind is ignorant, doesn't see things clearly, and is untrained, then those kind of judgments seem to be automatic. There doesn't seem to be any kind of division or difference between those. I like means I want, or I dislike means I hate. But in terms of the Buddha Dhamma and the Buddha's teaching and this way of practice, the Buddha's encouragement is, well, look closely, because there's a bridge that's being crossed. There can be liking without that turning into the craving of I want, I've got to have, or there can be disliking, something can be painful, and it doesn't have to be hated, it doesn't have to be feared, it doesn't have to be resented. It can be known as, this is a painful feeling. Ow, it's painful. That there is pain there, but the mind doesn't have to hate it or fear it or reject it or have any comment about it. It's still painful, but there's no wrongness attributed to it. The mind is not adding anything onto it. So the Buddha pointed to knowing how that quality of craving arises, and through that letting go, letting go of those reactions of wanting or hating, to be able to know the realm of feeling as it is. There's sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thought, emotion. Some are pleasant, some are painful, some are neutral. It's like this. And on its own, the realm of feeling is quite simple, quite innocent, quite spacious. You can have a really, really pleasant feeling and not try to own it or keep it or preserve it or claim it. Just, here it is, it's delicious, it's like this, it's beautiful, full stop. Or it can be something really painful, really uncomfortable, really difficult, an illness or an injury or a loss in your life, and it can be known, this is grief, it's like this, it's painful. Here's this injury, this hurts, ow. And the mind doesn't have to add anything to it. There's no kind of embellishment or conceiving around it. No manyati. The mind not saying, "I am this. I've got this. I have this. I don't want to be this way." So that's the second exit point. It relates to the second noble truth, and that the Buddha's encouragement is with the experience of tanha, craving, to let go. And if it's let go of, then it doesn't lead to the next sections of the path. I think if I'm counting properly, Vedana, feeling is link number 7, and then craving is link number 8. If that craving is attached to, and the mind buys into that, then it heads very quickly from craving to clinging, upadana, which is number 9, then bhava, which is link number 10, which is becoming, and then which leads to jati, which is birth, which is link number 11, and then birth leads to aging and death, jara, marana, soka parideva, dukkha, domanasu, vayasa, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, link number 12. So if that bridge is not crossed, if those feelings of liking and disliking are recognized and let go of, then that feeling doesn't ripen in dukkha. It doesn't ripen in that kind of birth and then subsequent psychological death and loss, but rather it's known simply as it is. It's an aspect of nature, and that in itself ripens with a quality of freedom and ease and peacefulness. The third exit point is, and these you might notice are sort of going back around the cycle. So we started off at link 12, second one was between link 7 and 8. This goes back to link number 1, and this is related to the first noble truth. So this is not allowing vijja to arise in the first place, sustaining the mind in a quality of awareness, of vijja, awakened awareness, so that avijja, the ignorance, doesn't arise. So back at the beginning of link number 1, which on the cycle is avijja pacaya sankhara, ignorance, conditions, formations. So this exit point is sustaining the mind in awakened awareness. Many of us have been listening to Luang Por Sumedho's Dhamma teachings, particularly over these last few months, and almost every single one of them revolves around exactly this. He uses a variety of terms. Often he's talking about consciousness, awareness, awakened awareness, and there's different words we can use. The Pali word vijja, I feel, is very helpful in representing this quality, so that if the mind is fully awake and aware, then ignorance doesn't arise. It's the mind, the heart, the citta is fully attuned to the Dhamma, to the reality of this present moment. So the ignorance does not arise. But when we look at the process of dependent origination, the arising part is in a way just the first half, part 1. So that leads to the experience of aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Then in many recensions or places in the teachings where the Buddha speaks about this, then it immediately goes on to what is called the cessation side, or the ending part, or the kind of going against the same pattern of arising. It's a pattern of cessation. So you can, in a way, talk about the whole process as dependent origination and cessation. So when the Buddha is describing this, then he says, avijjaya taveva asesa viraga nirodha, with the complete cessation of the complete cessation of ignorance, then there is a cessation of sankhara. When there is no ignorance, then sankhara, that division, that formational tendency doesn't arise. So when we use the word nirodha, then in English it's usually translated as cessation. which tends to mean the ending of something that has begun. But again, the Venerable Payutto, in his wonderful book, Dependent Origination, has a whole little section, a page or two, on that's entitled "A Problem with the Word Nirodha," and he spells this out quite beautifully and clearly. He says, "Well, it's usually translated as cessation, which implies the ending of something that has begun. But Nirodha also means non-arising. It means the restraining of something from coming into being at all, or the checking or the holding of something." So that when we talk about the ending of ignorance, it doesn't mean that ignorance has begun and then it stops. It can also mean the non-arising of ignorance, so that there isn't any avijja, there's just vijja. So this third exit point is to sustain the heart, the citta, in that quality of awareness, so that this is related to the third noble truth, dukkha nirodha, in that respect that it's the nirodha, it's the non-arising, the cessation of ignorance. The mind is awake, it's aware, it knows, so that it's say not beginning that cycle at all, and so that the way that the third noble truth needs to be developed, or needs to be say brought to fulfillment, in the teaching on the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha says it's satchikata bhanti, it is to be realized, to notice. So this is one of the most challenging. And the other day when I was filling in for Lumpur Sumedho on the first Sunday talking about the Four Noble Truths, I think I went through all of these, but it doesn't do any harm to go over it all again, I would say. That satchikata bhanti, they are this third truth is to be realized. The ending of dukkha is to be realized. So when the mind is awake and aware and knowing, then there's a quality of peacefulness and ease. But peace does not grab our attention. Space, silence, peace, stillness, they don't grab our attention. They don't captivate the senses. They don't catch our eye. When something moves, the eye turns to it and say, "Oh, what's that? Is that a bird flying by, or is that what was that just came into my field of vision?" If nothing is moving, the eye doesn't go to that thing that's not moving, or the ear doesn't say, "What was that sound? What was that silence?" Silence is not interesting. Stillness, space, peace is not interesting. So with this third exit point of being awake, being aware, and sustaining that quality of awareness, this is very challenging in some respects, because it's very easy to be awake, to be aware, to be peaceful for a few seconds, and then there's this, "Oh, this is peaceful." we switch off. That peacefulness, stillness, silence, spaciousness, it can easily be overtaken by the habits of delusion, of moha, of unmindfulness, of just switching off and not fully knowing, not fully realizing that quality. So that development, or the fulfillment of that third noble truth, or following that third exit point, can be most sort of challenging or difficult. But I would say it's also most rewarding, because the mind is not creating. It's not sort of getting drawn into that cycle. It's not creating self-view or conceit around what we think, what we feel, what we see, smell, taste, and touch, what we remember, what we imagine. The mind is not creating a conceit. Self-view is not forming a solid subject-object division, but rather it's resting in what I like to call subjectless, objectless awareness. So fully attuned to the present reality, the present field of experience, but not creating a person out of it, not here, not there. So this, I would say, is a third exit point, and related to the third noble truth. So a couple of years ago, when I was leading a retreat on the people had asked me to give talks about the dependent origination, and I thought, well, it's kind of neat that each of those three exit points all relate to the first three noble truths. But what about number 4? We've already got back to the beginning of the cycle. So is there an exit related to the fourth noble truth? that I'm not thinking of, or I'm not aware of, and how could you go back before, back before the 0 point, back before sort of number 1 on the cycle? So I was pondering this and reflecting on it, and then I remembered that there was a particular teaching in the Book of the Tens, in the Numerical Discourses, the Anguttara Nikaya. If you want to look it up, it's Sutta number 61. There's very few places in the Pali Canon where the Buddha speaks about the causes or the origins of avijja. He talks about I think in the Majjhima Nikaya, I think in the let's see, I think it's in one of the early sutras. I think it's not Sutta number 9. Again, I'm not remembering very correctly, not clearly. But he talks about the asavas, the outflows, as being a cause for ignorance. But it's not something that he speaks about very often. But in this particular sutta, in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Tens, he goes into it in quite some detail about where ignorance comes from. And he says that the ignorance has a cause, has a support. And that is the 5 hindrances. And the 5 hindrances, they have a cause, they have a support. There's qualities that fuel the 5 hindrances of sense desire, ill will, restlessness, dullness, and doubt, the 5 nivarana. And he said that it's the 5 unwholesome the 5 kinds of, the 3 kinds of unwholesomeness: unwholesomeness in speech, unwholesomeness in action, unwholesomeness in thought, unskillfulness in those areas. That's what feeds the 5 hindrances. And what feeds those 3 unwholesome actions, or those 3 unwholesome attitudes. And he says it's lack of sense restraint, being, say, impulsive, or following your impulses, not being restrained in your body, in your speech, in controlling the senses. And he said that lack of sense restraint, that also has a fuel, that has a source, that's supported by something, and that lack of sense restraint is supported by lack of mindfulness and full awareness, sati sampajanya. And a lack of mindfulness and full awareness is fueled by a lack of wise reflection, and not reflecting wisely. And a lack of wise reflection is fueled by a lack of faith. That you don't have a quality of faith in Dhamma, faith in reality, a faith in spiritual practice. A lack of faith has a fuel, has a source, has a root, and that is not hearing good teachings, sadhamma savana, not listening to the teachings, not paying attention to spiritual direction, not reflecting on reality in a skillful way. And then he says, and not hearing the good Dhamma, that has a source, that has a fuel, and it's not spending time with good people, sapurisa, sangseva. So that is the root, that's the source that he points to as the origins of ignorance, is not spending time with good people, not spending time with good-hearted, well-rounded, spiritually motivated people. That's the root. And he says, but if you do spend time with helpful people who are sapurisa, good-hearted, well-rounded, spiritually oriented people, then it creates opportunities to listen to the good teachings, sadhamma savana. If you listen to helpful teachings, good teachings, valid spiritual teachings, this gives rise to faith. Faith then gives rise to wise reflection. To yoniso manasikara, wise reflection then gives rise to and supports sati sampajanya, mindfulness and full awareness, or intuitive wisdom, that comprehensive mindfulness. If there's mindfulness and full awareness, then that leads to sense restraint, to living responsively rather than reactively, not being impulsive or compulsive, but rather responsive and attuned to what's appropriate, what's beneficial, what's noble and liberating according to time and place and situation. So if you are living with sense restraint, if there's indriya samvara, then that supports the three kinds of wholesomeness: wholesomeness in thought, wholesomeness in speech, wholesomeness in action, and that then supports the four foundations of mindfulness. That the four foundations of mindfulness support the 7 factors of enlightenment, and then the 7 factors of enlightenment support true knowledge and liberation. Ta-da! So, in other words, vijja, or awareness, awakened awareness. So I felt that's a very helpful way of thinking of the sort of the fourth exit point is really, who do you choose to spend your time with? Who are your friends? How do you spend your time? What do you what sort of choices do we make that sort of bring about or support an environment, bring about the presence of a helpful and supportive, encouraging environment. So again, this is not the only way or sort of the true or proper way to understand this. It's just one particular pattern of reflection. But I feel it's also carried out in a number of other teachings. Like in the beginning of the Mangala Sutta, the discourse on the highest blessings, the Buddha says that when he's asked what are the highest blessings, a mangala is it can mean something like a spiritual blessing or a protection. It can be like a magical charm or a talisman or a protection against illness or harm. So a mangala can be or kind of a mantra that you recite, or a tattoo with a kind of that sort of protects you from being bitten by dogs, or protects you from diseases or different things. So a mangala can be that kind of a lucky charm or a protective device. This deva comes to the Buddha and says, what is the highest mangala? What's the highest blessing? How would you describe that? But then the list that the Buddha gives, I think it's 38 mangalas that he describes. That there's nothing about lucky charms or mantras or even anything of that nature at all. But rather, all of the mangalas he describes are about choices that we make, skillful actions and speech. And the very first on the list of the mangalas he describes in the Mangala Sutta is asevana chabalanang panditanang sevana, not to associate with fools, but to associate with the wise. This is the highest blessing. So avoiding those of foolish ways, associating with the wise, this is the highest blessing. So right there, at the beginning of that sutta, so number one on the list, don't hang out with foolish people. Spend time with wholesome, with helpful people. Or similarly, the Buddha's teaching about spiritual friendship, when Venerable Ananda said to the Buddha that spiritual friendship, kalyana mitra, is half of the holy life, and then the Buddha said, not so, Ananda, it's not half the holy life, it's the whole of the holy life. Kalyana mitra, it's the whole of the holy life. So that spending, drawing close to wholesome friends, to wholesome, noble people, that's the kind of fuel or the support, that which really encourages and enables us as human beings to actualize the holy life and living in a skillful way. So, as an exit point from the cycle, and I feel it's related to the fourth noble truth in terms of the fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path. It's all about what we do and the choices that we make in terms of attitude, in terms of speech, in terms of action, in terms of livelihood, in terms of mind training. It's all about what we do. So it's a more general connection, I would say, but it's. I feel it is closely related insofar as it's about what are the choices that we make. during the course of a day? How do we choose to spend our time? What do we put our attention on? What do we take our attention off? So it's seeing what's going to be beneficial and what's going to be sort of helpful and supportive to us. The quality of a sappurisa, a good person or a good-hearted person, a well-rounded person. Again, the Buddha spells that out in various places, in another of the wonderful little books of Venerable Payutto, Somdet Payutto, he spells out. I think it's a book called The Constitution for Living. Then he goes through these 7 aspects of a sappurisa, a good, well-rounded person. And without going into a lot of detail here, it's really about developing your life with mindfulness and full awareness. It's like to be a sappurisa yourself, to say develop your own life, but also recognizing those qualities in other people. So a sappurisa, a well-rounded, a good-hearted person, they contemplate the causes of things. They look into where things come from. That's dhammanyutta. Attanyutta means they look at the results of things. So people who are thoughtful, who pay attention to where things come from, where they go, how the processes of nature and life, how they work, and what leads to benefit, what leads to harm. So those are the first 2. The third one is attanyutta, knowing your own character. So you know if you're an extrovert or if you're an introvert, or you're good with your hands, or you're not good with your hands, or you're an artistic type, or you're a mechanical type, or both. So knowing your own character, knowing your own personality, your own strengths and weaknesses. Then the fourth one on the list is matanyutta, which is knowing the right amount. So that if you're working, like we have these samagi working bees every week on a Friday, so knowing when it's time to take a break, knowing when or the right amount, or even like I was pulling nails from timbers out of the publications building, so knowing what's the right amount of pressure to be heaving on an old nail stuck into a piece of wood. When you're eating food, which is one of the most challenging areas to know the right amount, when you're eating and you're listening to what your body needs, you're feeling that, and then that recognition, okay, this is enough. This is about to be enough. Okay, this is time to put the spoon down and to finish eating, rather than just carrying along eating compulsively or wanting to just finish off everything that's in your bowl if you took a little bit more than you really needed. But knowing, okay, that's enough. Knowing the right amount and then stopping. Or even before that, when you're going along the servery here at Amaravati, when your hand is reaching for the dishes, to know the right amount to pick up and to put into your bowl. So so matanyutta is the fourth one. Then kalanyutta, knowing the right time. So the right time to come to a meeting, the right time if having a conversation. Okay, that's enough of this. Time to finish this. Or you want to have a conversation with someone and you see that they're really busy and they're active, and think, oh, okay, this is not the right time to have a conversation with them. Leave it till another time. So kalanyutta, kala is time. Then the last 2 are puga, the knowing other people's characters and personalities, so that the people that you're working with, the person that you're talking to, is it a young person, an old person? Do you know them well? Do you not know them well? What's appropriate to the time, the place, the situation to be talking about, or what fits in with who they are and how they are. And then the last one is parisanyutta, knowing the group. So who are you talking to? What's the occasion? Who are you with? Is it appropriate for you to be talking? Are you senior? Are you junior? Are you leading? Are you following? Are people agitated? Are they calm? Are they, what fits in with the group? What is appropriate for you to do in relationship to the group that you're being a part of? So all of those are different ways that we are, say, developing mindfulness and full awareness, also seeing that in other folks, and seeing that if someone does have these qualities of a well-rounded person, then sapurisa sangseva, draw close and spend time with people who have those kind of qualities. And if they don't, if they're people who are reactive or agitated, opinionated, or they don't know the right amount, they don't know the time, the place, they are insensitive to the people around them, and kind of chaotic and say self-centered or impulsive, compulsive, then to be considering, well, do I need to be close to this person or to this group of people? Is it helpful to me for me to be with people who function in this kind of way, or is this just creating more agitation and difficulty within me? Or do I need to be spending time in this environment, or can I put my attention elsewhere? Similarly, with what we put our attention onto in terms of the media, what we might be, say, reading or watching in terms of media activity, what we engage with on the television or computer, or what we spend our time listening to or reading. That's also, I'd say, part of this whole sapurisa sangseva. What do we put our attention onto? Are we spending our time in the field of influence of people who are being foolish or violent or selfish or crazy, or agitated? Or are we spending time around people who are thoughtful and kind, generous, and attentive? What are the effects of the choices that we make in terms of where we put our attention and who we choose to be with? Maybe the last thing to share about spiritual birth control is not just about our own mind and these 4 exit points from the cycle, which are sort of related to our own choices, our own actions with respect to our own life, but also birth control. In biological birth control is about not bringing babies into the world that are not wished for. So I say there's also an aspect of birth control about not creating other people. So it's not just about not creating this person, but it's also about not creating other people. And so many years ago, there was one of the Sangha members was going off to spend time with their family, and was quite worried about how reactive their parents were in relationship to them being a monastic. And they were quite concerned, quite sort of worried about how it was going to work out. It was the first time going back as a monastic to stay with the family, and this was years and years ago, in the early days of Chithurst Monastery. And Luang Por Sumedho made this very wonderful comment at the time that really struck me. And he said, "The kindest thing you can do for your parents is not to create them." And it was one of those. The whole room went sort of, oh, because it's not the way that we think. It's like, oh, what can I do for my parents? I'm a monk, I'm a nun, and they're not happy about this, or they would prefer that. And what can I do to make it right, to make it good, or make them happy? And it was so on the mark, so apposite, and so helpful. That it really stuck with me, even though Luang Por said it about 40 years ago now. So. The kindest thing that we can do for other people is not to create them, which means not to solidify our ideas. This person is like this, he is like this, she is like that. The things that we like, the things that we dislike, or just the ordinary everyday judgments about how people are. It doesn't mean to say we pretend people are invisible, that they don't have any conventional existence, but it's the way that the mind says, oh, my mother is like this, or my sister is like that, or I am like this, and this is the relationship we have is like this way, and it shouldn't be this way, it should be that way. And we create this false kind of solidity and And then that false division of me here, you there, as permanent, solid, separate entities, then no matter how hard we try to say, convene or connect with another in a harmonious or compassionate way, there's still me here and you there. And that it's never going to be arriving at a quality of real concord. But if we let go of each other, we don't create fixed views about who people are, how they are. The personalities still carry on. You still have female bodies or male bodies, or tall or short, or our eyes are still the same colors. These conventional aspects still pertain, but the mind is not making fixed judgments. So, she is like this, or he is like that, or I am this way, I want to be like that, or he shouldn't be this way, he should be that way. Rather, we are able to recognize those habits of perception or judgment and let them be known for what they are. They're just passing impressions or passing judgments, formations that arise and pass away. They don't have any solidity. And mysteriously, when we let go of each other, when we don't create each other and carry each other around, we are, and again speaking from experience, we're far more able to find a place of concord between us, or the apparent self and other, that by letting go of each other, we find that we are able to be more in accord with each other. And it's a cause for contemplation and reflection. It's a mysterious thing, but the most compassionate thing we can do for others, and the most helpful thing we can do for others, is to not create them. And with that, not making things fixed in terms of this being and other beings, then there's an openness, there's a capacity to attune to the time, the place, the situational, as good qualities of the Sappurisa can function freely, without being clogged up with conceiving of I am and you are, or there's that manyati, that I-making and mind-making, doesn't distort or clog up or cloud the system, but rather with a quality of clarity, then the heart can attune to the time, the place, the situation, and then action and speech and attitude can be formed in a way that is most beneficial, most helpful for the situation. So I offer these thoughts for consideration this afternoon. So there was one question on the theme that was sent in. So I will address this one first of all. My question relates to the link birth, jati, within the dependent origination. My understanding is that birth, quote unquote, in this instance refers to the birth or the arising of a second feeling or mind object. When, in the absence of insight, craving and clinging, habitual behaviors and becoming, following quick succession, resulting in the birth or arising of a new mental object. I'm assuming that birth, quote unquote, here does not mean the birth of a human being. Can you clarify this point and talk a bit more about the notion of rebirth in general from a Buddhist perspective, in particular related to awareness at the point of death of the physical body, please? So there's a few things there. I think I covered a lot of that in the talk. So birth, in that respect, jati, is the way the mind follows. There's a feeling of liking or disliking, that in that the Vedana, the sensation, a pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neutral feeling. If there is ignorance, then it's influenced by avijja, not seeing clearly. Then when there's a feeling of like, then that the bridge is crossed into craving. The I like turns into I want, and then that craving conditions clinging. I gotta have, And then the clinging conditions becoming, bhava, which is I'm gonna have, and then bhava conditions birth, jati, which is I've got. The mind is sort of moving towards and absorbing into the thing that it likes, or it can be equally aversion in terms of disliking something and then contending against it, or getting rid of it, or destroying it, and getting away from it. And then jati, that birth, or that, say, commitment to the thing that you've just got, a sense object, or an achievement, or a thing that you've got rid of, that then there's that yes, I've got it. That's the birth moment. And then having got it, then the aging and death, jara, marana, soka, parideva, dukkha, domanasa, upayasa, that's the having got that, having bought that new car, house, having moved into that new monastery, having taken hold of that angry feeling and spoken on it, acted on it, and let that person know what you feel about them. And there's a yes, okay, and so in that commitment of bhava and birth, then there's a limitation that comes in. There's a way that the mind is sort of narrowing its values, really. It's been born into that. You've bought that thing. It now belongs to you. You've got that car. You've got that house. You're in that monastery. You've made that commitment, and then you live with the results of that commitment. So there will be some pleasant and some neutral aspects to it, but there will also be some painful aspects to that. And so that the sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, that's describing the natural part of that process of having been born into any kind of psychological state, any kind of event, any kind of role. Then there comes that those painful aspects when that object is criticized, or when it's damaged, or when it's lost, or when the thing that you thought you got rid of comes back even stronger than before. You didn't get rid of it at all, and so that then the effect of that having been born then it has these painful resonances, and that's what we call in brief dukkha, that painfulness. So then I think I described that fairly thoroughly in the talk, and again in this little book, complete with handy dandy diagrams, a few to help explain things. That a lot of that is explained in there, or talked about in there. And then maybe the last point was, can you talk a bit more about the notion of rebirth in general from a Buddhist perspective, in particular related to awareness at the point of death of the physical body? So when reading that question, what comes to mind is a particular exchange between the Buddha and Mahanama, who was a relative of his in the Sakya community. And so Mahanama was the ruler, the sort of senior person in the Sakyan community, and he was asking the Buddha, what advice can you give to somebody on their deathbed? Sometimes Mahanama would be called to somebody's bedside as they're dying, and he's asking the Buddha, what kind of advice do you give to someone who's dying and at the end of their life? What's the best things to say? And then this is in the connected discourses on stream entry, Sotapati, the section number 55, I think. Connected discourses about stream entry in that collection, and the Buddha says, well, first of all, if you're at someone's bedside and you ask them, are you worried about your family, and the people who'll be left behind? And the person says, yes, I'm worried about my family. And then the Buddha said, well, if they say they're worried about their family, then you say, well, whether you worry about your family or you don't worry about your family, you're going to die anyway. So better that you let go of your worries about your family. If you're worried about your property and your businesses, your business concerns. You say, yes, I am. I'm worried about my property, about my business. Well, whether you worry about it or you don't worry about it, then you're going to die anyway. So it's better that you stop worrying about that. Let go of your worries about that. So this might sound like a bit of a brutal kind of. They're called the consolations, a fairly kind of blunt sort of consolation. But the Buddha was very straightforward in these respects. He was not he was not afraid to be blunt and to speak in a direct way. He wasn't always giving a sort of cuddly option, as it were. And these are called the consolations. So anyway, there was a few of those. He said that you're letting go of your family, or letting go of your business and your property and all of that. Whether you worry about it or you don't worry about it, you're dying anyway. So better to let that all go. And then he says, "Are you hoping to be reborn in a heavenly world?" And they say, "Yes, I would like to be reborn in the heaven of the four celestial monarchs, the Chatu Maharajas." And then you should, if they say they want to be born in the heaven of the four great kings, then you say, well, why settle for being born in the heaven of the four great kings? You could be born in the Tavatimsa heaven. And then so why settle for being born in the Tavatimsa heaven? You could be born in the Yama heaven, and then the Tusita heaven, and the heaven of those who delight in creating and those who delight in the creations of others. And why settle for being reborn in the heaven of those who delight in the creations of others? You could be reborn in the Brahma world. And then he says, and relating to this question here, he says, well, why settle for being reborn in the Brahma world? Because even in the Brahma world, the mind is still fixed around qualities of identity. Better for you to let go of your fixation on being reborn in the Brahma world, and instead to focus your attention on Sakaya Nirodha, on the cessation of identity. And that's one of the very few places in the Pali Canon, as far as I know, that term is used, Sakaya Nirodha. So the Sat means true or real, Kaya means the body or the person, Nirodha means cessation, so the cessation of self-view, really, or the self-idea or identity. So, and then the Buddha said, if such a one focuses the attention on Sakaya Nirodha, then there is no difference between the citta, the heart, the mind of that person. There's no difference in the state of liberation of that person than in the state of mind of one who's been a monk who's been an arahant for 100 years. And that's one of the few places where the Buddha talks about a layperson reaching arahantship. So again, that's worthy of note for people who wish to be appraised of that's one of the places where the Buddha talks about the possibility or the capacity for lay people to be fully enlightened. But it's not a small statement. He can be fairly blunt in terms of whether you worry about your family or you don't worry about your family, you're going to die anyway. So to let go of your worries, that's can be fairly seem fairly harsh. But at the other end of this teaching, you have this, if there is that realization of Sakaya Nirodha, that awareness of letting go of identification, and all that I-making and mind-making is dropped, then, as he said, there's no difference between the state of liberation of that person and a bhikkhu who's been an arahant for 100 years. So that's no small statement to make. That's not a small thing, and so I feel that's worthy of consideration. So that awareness at the point of death, I think, if that awareness is fully cultivated to that point of Sakaya Nirodha, then there's the realization, Rupang Anatta, the body is not self, or the body alive, the body dead. What's that got to do with anything important? It's just there's awareness of the body alive, awareness of the body dead. The body is not self in the first place. So that which is, I would say, to spell that out a little bit, that which is aware of the body or the personality isn't the body, the personality. That which knows the person isn't a person. That which is aware of this life, this moment, is not personal. It's not human. It's not limited by time or space. That quality of awareness isn't male or female or monastic or lay or old or young, or doesn't have a nationality or a location. It's undefinable in any of those terms, really. Awareness, it's aware, it's awake, it knows, but it's not confined or cannot be defined by those ordinary, everyday qualities. On a conventional level, you say, yes, Ajahn Amaro is a human being and he's talking into the microphone and looking at the camera, the people around here. But that which knows this experience isn't Ajahn Amaro. It's not a person. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't have an age or a gender or a nationality or a language. It's beyond all of those qualities. So if the heart truly awakens to that, then the death of the body is a sort of minor event, like an in-breath, out-breath, bodies born, bodies die, the earth turns, the sun rises, the sun sets. Those are changes in the field of experience, but there doesn't have to be anything that is sort of limiting or defining in those experiences. That which knows change isn't changing. That which knows birth and death isn't being born and dying. That's words referring to this quality, but the most important thing is to use the practice and the teachings to realize that have that sachikata bhanti. It is to be realized. It's to be known directly. Having the words for it and having the sort of recording of it is one thing, but then it's the moment by moment recognition that that which knows the person isn't a person. That which is aware is not confined or defined by time or location or identity, by causality. One of Luang Por Chah's teachings, the book that's called A Taste of Freedom in English, in the Thai version I think is called Nok Het Nua Pon. Forgive my bad pronunciation. Nok Het, which Nok means outside, Het is the cause. So outside of cause. Nir means above, porn means the result. So outside of cause and above effect. That's the title that they are taken from one of Luang Por Chah's Dhamma talks for that book. And I feel that's a helpful contemplation in this respect. So that awareness is nok het nir pon. It's outside of cause, above effect. Cause and effect only relates to the world of time. And if Dhamma is timeless, the kaliko, what does that say about cause and effect? So that when the heart awakens to its nature as Dhamma, it's knowing that timeless quality. Cause and effect don't apply. Location doesn't apply. Language and concept doesn't apply. As a letting go of all of those aspects, those attributes, and the death of the body, they say, is a particularly helpful, sort of a ripe moment if the attitude is, skillful and fully developed and imbued with wisdom. But we don't have to wait till the body's dying. That's the great blessing of Buddha Dhamma and the many practices that the Buddha spelled out and that we have as actions and qualities, modes of living that we have, the Buddha laid out and our teachers have laid out over the years that are available to us today, that we can follow these practices, we can use these teachings and put this into action. We can embody that. It's not just a set of words or ideas, but we can bring this sort of realization into being before the body's dying. We don't have to wait till the last breath to realize that Sakaya Nirodha, that the point of meditation, particularly Vipassana meditation, is to bring about that realization of Sakaya Nirodha, that cessation of identity, the true seeing of not self. And that can be done here and now, today. We don't have to wait till the last breath is coming. So that's the encouragement of the teachings and our teachers, is to make use of the time that we have and not leave it to the deathbed for that. that kind of quality of liberation to be actualized. So I'm happy to open things up if there's any questions in the room here, in the temple. So I see there's a couple of microphones around. So if anyone has any questions, we have a little bit more time today.
Thanks, Ajahn. I had a question about if the practice goes well when somebody sits, but then when there's a lot of stimulation, then it becomes even more difficult than it had been before somebody became more adept at sitting or walking meditation. How to kind of bring the benefits of sitting and keep the staying centered in the busyness of daily life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. Or the one-word answer is practice. I mean, there's different. I'm kind of joking, kind of not joking, because that's based upon the fact of seeing how the effects of getting caught up. I mean, there's a lot of activity or engagement, and then seeing, oh, I'm getting really stirred up by this, or I'm getting carried away, or confused, or shaken. The sage at peace is not shaken, not agitated. So recognizing, oh, this is not the sage at peace. This is an agitated samanera. And to recognize that, oh, this is the feeling of being caught up. This is the effect of getting swept up by this activity or this engagement, this conversation. In a way, so it's rather like the first exit point. Okay, having got caught up, having got born into that conversation, that activity, then here we are. This is the dukkha of having got caught up. Okay. Now this can ripen in two ways. So looking at the results of having got caught up and carried away, and then rather than just reacting to that, or think, oh, that's really bad. I shouldn't be like this. I should be a different way, or I'm really annoyed with this person who got me caught up in this way. So that's all missing the point. That's not realizing dukkha. That's blaming yourself or blaming other people and just creating more dukkha. That's the dukkha ripening in more dukkha and continuing the cycle. So I feel one of the most helpful things is after we have been caught up in a worry or an aversion or a greedy impulse or whatever it might be, just a busy impulse, when there is that moment of recognition, like, and having followed that, now it's like this. It's like that's the moment where there's the opportunity to apprehend that quality of dukkha. Okay, having got caught up, having got drawn into that worry or that busyness or that irritation, now it feels like this. Here it is, and that's really the receiving or the knowing of dukkha. It's like having done that, that's the cause. Here's the effect. It's this way. So that's where we turn the painful results of our actions and what we've been caught in, and we use that to inform a skillful way of relating to that, and rather than I should or I shouldn't or they should or they shouldn't, and creating more dukkha. That okay, that's the cause. This is the effect. It feels this way, and then in that moment, that which knows the effects of that being caught up, that is not tied to it. That's the awareness that's knowing the dukkha, the sort of the wreckage of having followed that impulse. Okay, here's the effect of it. It's like this, and it's a challenge. But the more that we practice, the more we're able to just see that's the cause. This is the effect. It's like this, and not adding anything to it. Then it's still a mess, or it's still a painful result. Your stomach is still overstuffed, or whatever it might be. But there's that that quality of awareness is being established in relationship to that. That there's that knowing of it, and then seeing that that's the cause, this is the effect. Then that real appreciation, then it sinks in. So the next time that you're drawn into a situation or the similar pattern of events, then there's a remembering on a almost physical level. It's not just an idea, oh, I shouldn't do this, I should do that, but rather, oh, I know where this goes, and then there's less of an impulse, a compulsion to engage, because it's strange how it works, but the more wordless that learning is, the more non-conceptual, the more, in a way, visceral, physical that learning is, the more easy it is not to be drawn in the next time similar conditions come about, where somebody's getting sort of agitated and excited, and where you got drawn in before, something in you knows, I know where this goes. Like, do I really need to get involved in this? And without aversion or criticism of another person or a situation, you say, okay, let's hold this a bit more spaciously, or do I need to join in? And the more that you see, oh, that brings a very good result, then that's a sort of positive reinforcement. Okay, that arose, that was the choice that was made. How does this feel now? Great. And that's the other aspect of it, I would say, is along with that sort of the yoniso manasikara, the kind of wise reflection, is in a way, mindfulness directed towards the body. That often we're caught up in people and actions and words, and we miss the way that the body is holding itself, or the tensions or stresses, or the posture of the body. And so that during the course of the day, to continually bring the attention to the feelings of the body, how you're standing, how you're walking. When you're going from A to B, are you kind of going somewhere, or are you with the action of walking in a peaceful and clear way? And particularly when there isn't much going on, or there isn't anything that's got your name on, that's the best time to really establish that quality of mindfulness of the body, to be developing that track of, okay, how does the body feel? How does my back feel? What's the expression on my face? How am I holding my shoulders or my stomach or my hands? How am I walking? How am I standing? How does this feel? Just bringing attention to that, not to be judgmental, but just feeling it, knowing it. And then when there is some activity or there's more of an engagement, then that track of knowing the body and attending to the body in a mindful way is more well formed, it's more established. So then when you are in that process of getting swept up by something, caught up in some activity or a conversation or some kind of gotta-do-ness, then the feelings of the body are more accessible. You recognize, oh, my jaw just tightened, or my shoulders have gone rigid, my hands are clenched, and you notice that more readily, more quickly, and then that's a helpful signal that, okay, things are getting out of balance, and then relaxing the body, being more attuned to the present through the feelings of the body, mindfulness of the body, then it helps to be able to be in those situations, but in a relaxed way. Like when I was heaving the nails out of the timbers, just to not get over focused on this nail that's not budging, and to say, okay, now what's the best way to work on this? Am I using the right tool? Okay, now if I pull this crowbar, if I'm pulling it towards me, if that nail suddenly goes, I'm going to get a crowbar in my chin. Okay, move it. So I'm pulling it, but I'm pulling it away from soft flesh that's in the trajectory. So pulling it that way, so that you're using your body awareness and in the midst of actions that you're engaging in, and so then that you still carry out the actions, and you can be doing a lot of stuff in a busy, in an active way, with a lot of things moving quickly, or using a lot of muscle and such like. But that doesn't mean it has to be stressful or burdensome. That you can be moving quickly, but extremely peacefully. and developing a lot of mindfulness of the body really helps in that, and that it's a very reliable sort of indicator and a way of attuning to the reality of the present. If you could pass the microphone to Ajahn Bodhivala.
Thank you, Ajahn. You talk a lot about dependent origination, and it seemed to me that the two main factors that create conflict in the world, which are the jealousy and the stinginess. Through dependent origination, I couldn't find the origin of that. So would you please find those origins so we can uproot those two? Thank you, Ajahn.
Jealousy and stinginess.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, good question. There's one of the places where the Buddha spells out dependent origination. I think it's in the, I might be wrong, but I think in the Mahanidana Sutta, the long discourse on dependent origination in the Digha Nikaya, when it doesn't go to speak about jealousy or stinginess, but it does talk about this is the cause for people taking up weapons and fighting with each other and arguing and conflict. It's sort of that, if I might be remembering that incorrectly, so forgive me if I got that wrong.
Safeguard. Translation. People are taking things and then they want to keep them safe.
Safeguarding, yeah. So that
Picking up stones and sticks and rocks.
trying to keep hold of the things that they have. So safeguarding the things. So that I think stinginess, trying to keep hold of the things that you got and keep away people from taking them. Keep people away from you, from taking them away. Keeping to stop people taking them away from you. But yeah, it's a lot to do with the feeding of self-view and that my possessions, my activity, my place, my things are more important than yours. My happiness is more important than yours. Me having things is more important than you having anything. So, and then, which would relate to stinginess and possessiveness and keeping hold of the things that you've got. And then jealousy is the flip side of that, of like, you've got something that I should have and you don't deserve it and I should have that instead. And so it produces that sense of a sort of mixture of greediness and aversion in relationship to others, because there's a feeling of lack on your part. You deserve that say those resources or that reputation or that power in the world, and somebody else who doesn't deserve it has got it, and you're the one who should have it. So they're all based around self-view and that conceiving mind, that the I-making and mind-making habits. So I feel that by reflecting on dependent origination and seeing how like the Buddha said in that teaching from the Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta about conceiving is a disease, is a tumor, it's like a poisoned arrow, that the more that any attitude that we have is based on that egotistical thinking, self-centered thinking, necessarily it's going to be painful. And then the opposite, of the more that's recognized as even though it's a strong habit in the world and around us, and drives a lot of activity in the world, that the more that we can see that self-centered thinking is painful for us and it's divisive between us and others, then the more that we can learn how to the more we're encouraged to let go of it, get beyond it.
That article I read in the teaching of the Lord Buddha to the Devas, And the answer in that, which I'm not satisfied in that, is desire. The origin of those two factors is desire. And that's the reason why I asked you. Thank you, Ajahn.
Ajahn, what you said before about when the timeless aspect of the Dhamma is realized, the cause-effect, the relationship kind of doesn't apply. Does this mean that the whole dependent origination cycle kind of collapses over itself?
Short answer, yes. It's like if there's vijja, then the whole thing doesn't begin in the first place. And that explanation by Venerable Payutto I found very, very helpful, because rather than so dukkha nirodha, meaning dukkha has arisen and then it stops, it can also mean the non-arising of dukkha, that it sort of the whole thing doesn't begin. And so it's one of those areas where the conceptual mind it conceives in time and in a sort of subject-object format. So it's difficult to use the thinking mind to really appreciate it. But like Luang Por Sumedho has often been talking recently about time and timelessness, and how timelessness, it's unimaginable. You can't really create an image of it. So what is the world like without cause and effect? You can't really imagine it. But I found that expression of Luang Por Chah's of outside of cause and above effect, it's like, yeah, in the conventional world, there's cause and effect. We say it's Sunday afternoon, 2:00, there's a Dhamma talk. And then the Dhamma talk's an hour long, and then there's some questions. There's a cause, there's an effect. And the clock now says 3:35, so that it's the world of time and beginnings and endings. But in the world, in the realm of timelessness, or the dimension of timelessness, then if there's no time, then how can cause and effect operate in the same way? It doesn't make sense. So that rather than trying to create an imagined picture, so what would the world be like without cause and effect? Or what is the timeless like? That because our imagination can only draw upon our memory or our experience, and it runs out of, it's like running out of paint. There's no paint left in your palette. It's like there's nothing to paint with. So that it's an area I find is very, very helpful and inspiring listening to Luang Por's teachings on this, because in a way it encourages you to not try and fill up that sort of spacious, wordless, unformed appreciation with an idea or a plan or a description or an explanation, but rather, this is the timeless. It's like this, and why he says it's like this, over and over again, because you can't imagine or describe or use words or concepts to represent the reality perfectly, but it can be known directly through the citta. And so that the teaching and the practices of Dhamma are continually pointing towards that, developing our life and the situation, our attitudes to the point where that letting go can happen, and not trying to formulate that ultimate reality of the way things are into a concept or a word or a description, but letting it be that which is embodied through realization in the present, and that's the only, I would say, valid and valuable way to relate to that. So just taking a phrase like with the meditation, I like to do things just like to take a phrase like outside of cause and above effect, and just drop that into the mind and just let that have its effect, as it were. Or like a phrase like, that which knows the person isn't a person. and not have anything added onto that, just dropping that in, because in that moment of phrasing those words internally, or let's say outside of cause, above effect, then there's a period of clarity that comes as by saying those words. The usual assumptions and habitual ways of seeing and thinking, they fall away, but they don't have to be replaced with anything. And that's the spaciousness that comes with that, sort of popping that bubble. Then that's the answer, as it were. That's the quality that is being realized. In a sense, that the Dhamma is clarified and more fully and completely knowable, realizable, when those habitual judgments based on time and identity and space, they fall away. If that, that's a lot of the way I practice in formal meditation, is using those kind of sort of world-stopping phrases just to sort of burst that bubble, and then just to leave to leave that, in even using words like space, because like space is related to three-dimensional sensory experience, so at least space doesn't really apply. Form and formlessness doesn't really apply. That those are all words that are conditioned by our sensory experience. So even they don't apply. But just conventionally speaking, just to say in the space of the mind, just leaving that space as open and unbiased as possible, and letting that sort of speak for itself, letting that be its own reality. And then watching as other things pop in and judgments arise, and here and there, hear the sort of pigeons singing in the morning, making their crowing noises in the morning, and then there's a pigeon out there, and how the mind creates the world through attachment to a sensation or a sound or a feeling or a memory and so on, and then watching a world come into being, and then again, that which knows the world is not limited by the world, and then the habitual judgments and limitations that the habits of perception create, they fall away. So perhaps that's enough for today. So thank you for your good questions, and please take these reflections, and may they serve you well.